for some football. I don't know about you. Who else could it be but your man Lou? Yeah.
The Louie T Network is powered by the Card Collector Series. Join me, your man, Louie T, on my journey back into the card collecting space with the Card Collector Series on YouTube. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to Wild Card Weekend, Super Wild Card Weekend, continued coverage of the 2021 NFL playoffs here on the Louie T Network. And this was an uneventful game. And I'm actually shocked because of all the Wild Card Weekend games, the Super Wild Card Weekend games, this is the first time the NFL has played a playoff game on Dr. Martin Luther King Day. I really thought this would be the toughest one to call. I wasn't really sure what direction to go in. I mulled over this game long and hard because it's family business first and foremost. NFC West family business. If these two teams said they ain't did it, then they ain't did it. But if they did, well, it's NFC West family business, and I didn't know which direction to go in. This is not my family business. Try to keep my nose out of business that does not pertain to me. So naturally, I was somewhat, confused as to which Cardinals team is going to show up. And what I've ultimately come to terms with this Cardinals team is that, because for me, the downturn of their season coincided with the injury to DeAndre Hopkins. So for me, a healthy DeAndre Hopkins completes this offense, therefore making them a very dangerous football team. An injured DeAndre Hopkins really ravages that offense, changes their true potential and upside, then putting more strain on the defense that's good but not great. And you couple that with a team that hadn't been to the postseason before. Head coach had never been here. Quarterback had never been here. Relatively young team. Most of the players had never played in a postseason game. You can tell yourself over and over again, it's just another game. But it's the playoffs. And it's not just another game. It's win or go home. And so there's extra pressure that you put on yourself. So naturally, I decided to go with the team with playoff experience. Matthew Stafford had never won a playoff game, but he's played in some. Sean McVay hasn't won a Super Bowl, but he's coached in one. He's won playoff games. Aaron Donald, Von Miller, and that whole crew, Odell Beckham, you can say what you want. He's played in a playoff game before. Cooper Kupp's played in plenty of playoff games before. So I looked at that Rams squad and I said, this is a battle-tested team and they've played in playoff football. So I'm going to go with the Rams. Even though the Rams themselves weren't playing the greatest of football down the stretch. They had been playing a lot better, but they blew that 17-point lead against San Francisco last week in the final week of the regular season and made things a little tougher on them winning the division. But that said, they looked like the team that was more confident and sure of themselves. And in the playoffs, we like to minimize experience and what it truly means. Experience can't be quantified in any sport in the playoffs. It's a different game. Anyone that watches, postseason basketball would tell you it's nothing like the regular season. It's a totally different atmosphere and energy. Every possession matters. The defensive side of the basketball, the intensity is ratcheted up. And in the game of football, it's not dissimilar. Things I don't think there is any more emphasis put on defense or offense, but I think every play is magnified. And you can get away with throwing a stupid-ass, senseless pick at your own 3-yard line that gets turned into a residential call in a week 6 game against the Browns. And no one, we'll laugh about it and we'll point and say, what the hell was Kyler Murray doing? But you can't do that shit in a playoff game. You just can't. You can't make that kind of mistake in a playoff game. You just can't do it. And so that's the inexperience that you have with the Arizona Cardinals. You got to throw that football away. The minute you get contacted by that edge rusher or that linebacker, Reader, and he doesn't sack you, which I don't know what the hell he was trying to do initially. I don't think he really wanted to hit him and get a penalty. He tried to push him down, and that whatever the case may be, Murray was still on his feet. At that point, that's when you got to throw that shit away. And instead, he holds on to it. First of all, he was holding on to the damn ball way too long in that situation. You're in the end zone. You're 5 yards deep into your own end zone. You can't be back there building a damn house. If the shit's not open, you got to get rid of it, or you got to run. You got to do something. You cannot just stand there. And he did. So the inexperience of this Cardinals team showed in this football game. They made a ton of mistakes. They had penalties that wiped away some big gains and things of that nature. They just didn't look like a team that was sure of itself. So the better team won. Let's call it what it is. We got the best 4 matchups we could have gotten for the divisional round. I think we can all agree on that. You're going to get the Titans hosting the Bengals. That should be a fantastic football game. After that, you're going to get Green Bay hosting the San Francisco 49ers in the nightcap on Saturday. Then you're going to have Brady and the Bucks hosting these Rams that took care of business tonight in the first game on Sunday. And then we're going to finish up with what I think is going to be the best game of the playoffs to date, Chiefs hosting the Bills. So we got the best 8 teams left in the league. I believe that firmly, wholeheartedly. And I think we got the best 4 matchups we could have gotten. A lot of people will say the Cowboys, this and that. Cowboys weren't a good enough team. They proved that in the game on Sunday. But I think we got it right here. We got some really good matchups. And this Rams team, they look like the team that we thought they could be if everything that they've traded for, signed, and brought together all came together. Okay? This is what they're supposed to look like. It's hard to buy a Super Bowl. I've said it's impossible to. But the Rams, they're trying. They're trying to win a Super Bowl by, pushing all their chips to the center of the table. And all those moves that they've made, they're starting to pay dividends. Von Miller had a sack tonight. Obviously, Aaron Donald, sack, guy's a monster. But Sony Michel played well tonight. Odell Beckham Jr. Caught a touchdown, almost had another touchdown, threw a pass. He was huge in this game. And so you're starting to see all of those things kind of come together for the Rams. So and Matthew Stafford, solid game. He didn't go outside of himself. He didn't try to do anything extra than just play within the scheme, play within the game plan. Take what the Cardinals were giving them. He didn't like it. He didn't force it. What was he? 13-17. Matthew Stafford was in this game for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. This wasn't excuse me, I love what Sean McVay did in this game. Run the football. Run it. Take that pressure off, because Stafford is under a lot of pressure to win. A lot of people think he's a loser. And he's going to have to prove some people wrong. So what did Sean McVay, and I don't know if Sean McVay was thinking that in his head when he came up with this game plan, which was heavy on the run. They ran it 11 times in the first quarter. I don't know if that was the game plan or if he just said, look, we think we can attack the Arizona Cardinals on the ground, and they had success, so they just kept going to it. But Sean McVay is at his best when they run the football, which sets up the play action fake. And sometimes he gets away from that, and when they do, I think that's when they struggle. So if they continue to be balanced like they were tonight, not put all of the onus on Matthew Stafford's shoulders to, shoulder that burden to carry this team, but rather be balanced, run the football. You know who looked really good tonight? God damn, Cam Akers looked good tonight. And it's just a quick reminder. When he came back last week for the first time, never envisioned. And that's why I said modern science and technology is amazing. These guys are coming back faster and faster. When's the last time a guy tore his Achilles? First of all, an Achilles, not an ACL, an Achilles. When's the last time you heard of a guy tearing their Achilles and coming back in that same year? Now, it's not the same calendar year, but that happened in July. The man is playing in a football game, meaningful football games here in January. When's the last time you can remember something like that happened? 6 months later? Are you serious? And he looks like Cam Akers the last time we saw him when he was carving up the Green Bay Packers and the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs last year when he looked like the best player on the field. So if they can get him going, sprinkle in a little bit of Sony Michel, then get this pass game going. I love Tyler Higbee. And Cooper Kupp, we know what he is, Triple Crown winner. Odell Beckham on the other side gives them the balance that they need at the receiver position after they lost Robert Woods. You know, sprinkle in just a tiny bit of Van Jefferson, not much. Don't need a lot of Van Jefferson, just a little touch of Van Jefferson. And what you have the makings of is a dangerous offense that can be explosive at any time and is good enough to win a Super Bowl. And they showed you a little bit of that tonight. Defensively, I still think they're a work in progress because, I mean, literally, they had a guy that hadn't played football in 2 years at safety in this game. Briefly, they didn't have him in a ton because they didn't need him in there. But Eric Weddle is on this roster. And so they're still coming together. You know, they may get Taylor Rapp back. They may not get him back. I don't think they're going to get the other safety, Jordan Fuller, back this postseason. But in any event, they're still, I think, gelling and meshing on the defensive side of the football, but they've got studs over there. You know, they've got Gumby, Leonard Floyd. They've got Aaron Donald, obviously, Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey. You know, they've got studs on that side of the football. So if they can get their best players playing their best football during this stretch, they could get hot like Tampa Bay did last year. And if they do that, the Rams could easily be representing the NFC. And this was a dominant performance. And I didn't see it coming. It's similar to the Buffalo Bills and what they did and how they destroyed the New England Patriots. I didn't see this kind of ass whooping from a family member. I just didn't see that happening this time of the year. But in the two trilogies that we got with the two family business matchups, we got two ass whoopings. The home team took care of business. Home teams were 5-1 in Super Wildcard Weekend. And that's not a surprise. I think I was talking to a buddy of mine on the phone, and he said, look, you should have went undefeated this weekend picking these games with, you know, the two games that were in question being the Dallas game. You could have easily picked Dallas, and that would have made sense if you did that. And, you know, this one was a toss-up too. Obviously, the outcome didn't feel that way, but this was a toss-up. So I just felt like the Rams were the better team as of right now. Had you told me DeAndre Hopkins was going to play in this game, because J.J. Watt looked good tonight. If you would have told me DeAndre Hopkins was playing tonight and he was healthy and he was ready to rock and roll, I think this is a different game, because what I realize is that when Kyler Murray, and this is not that dissimilar from every other team with a number one wide receiver and a quarterback that has synergy with that number one wide receiver. When all else fails, you just go to your guy. It's 3rd and 7, and he's got one-on-one on the outside. You throw a 12 back to 10, and it's nothing. That guy runs a back shoulder fade 25 yards down the field, and you just throw it to him, and you guys know that he's going to stop, and you're going to put it on the outside shoulder, and he's going to catch it as he falls out of bounds. Like, there's a synergy there. A guy that you can go to when all else fails. When shit breaks down, I know 10 is somewhere on the field, and I'm just going to get it to him. They lose that aspect when he's not on the field. Think about it this way. What would the Rams do without Cooper Kupp? What would the Bills do without Stephon Diggs? These are all talented offenses with multiple guys to get the football to. But what would the Rams do without Cooper Kupp? What would the Bills do without Stephon Diggs? What would the Packers do without, you get where I'm going with this, okay? Without Devontae Adams. You take away a team's number one option at the receiver position, and it hamstrings that offense. It changes the way they operate. And that's what this Arizona Cardinals team had happened to them. And honestly, I feel like their demise kind of went with him getting injured. You know, it was funny. They were begging for respect when they were 10-2, and they claimed no one was giving them the respect that they had deserved and earned. They were the last undefeated team at 7-0, and I never really bought into the Cardinals. Remember, I kept disrespecting the Cardinals, and they kept winning games. And I said, all right, I'm going to stop disrespecting the Cardinals. But to me, the Cardinals are a team that they're still searching for an identity. You know, their head coach, I think he's still trying to figure things out. I like Cliff Kingsbury, but, you know, there's this thing. I saw a stat on Cliff Kingsbury. And, you know, sometimes I try not to make too much of things like this, but sometimes these things are pertinent. They showed his record at Texas Tech, and they showed his record in Arizona. And they showed the starts that he has gotten off to. And, you know, there were years at Texas Tech, 4-5-0, 6-0, getting off to these great starts. And I remember some of those years at Texas Tech where they get off to a 6-0 start. And then all of a sudden they've got this massive game on a Saturday night against Oklahoma in Lubbock. And then they get their asses pounded by Oklahoma. And then they just go on this downward spiral. And next thing you know, they finish up the season. They were 6-0, and they finish up the season, you know, 7-5 or 8-4. And so they showed all of these fast starts he's gotten off to, and then they show these whimper finishes, you know, at Texas Tech and then into Arizona. And he did it again this year. Now, injuries are definitely a part of it. And, you know, circumstances, you don't always know exactly why things happen the way they do, but this is a thing for Cliff Kingsbury. Till he changes the narrative, this is a thing. He always starts fast, but he doesn't finish well in seasons. And whether that's teams make adjustment to his teams and he doesn't make adjustments to the adjustments, or whatever the case may be, he's going to have to figure out how to get over that hump. And I knew they were going to struggle because of the lack of experience, but it was less about the lack of experience, more about not having your best wide receiver, if you ask me. So they got destroyed in this game, but I think it was more about the Rams just having seen them 3 times, feeling confident about their guys, being healthy at the right time, and then just going out and executing at a much higher level than the Arizona Cardinals did in this football game. So let's get to the comment section and see what you guys have to say. Metaphor writes, Bucks probably not excited. Rams could be a big problem for Tampa Bay and for Tampa and the boys. Predict an L for the champs. Sorry, rarely even. That's going to be a really good game, and they've beaten the Buccaneers already. You know, I've said this already. We've had a bunch of rematches so far in the postseason. I think in Wildcard Weekend, 5 of the 6 matchups were rematches that we've seen at some point during the regular season. The only one that wasn't a rematch of a regular season contest was Dallas hosting San Francisco. But the other 5 games, Raiders, Bengals, played in the regular season. Bills and Patriots, obviously divisional foes, played in the regular season. You get to Sunday, Tampa Bay played Philadelphia in the regular season. The nightcap on Sunday, Chiefs and Steelers, we had just seen that game 3 weeks ago, and it was an ass whooping. And then we got another ass whooping. And then this game, obviously family members, they play each other during the regular season. So we're getting a lot of matchups with teams that have met before. And we're going to get a lot of that again in the next round. The Packers played the 49ers in a regular season game. Remember, it came down to the wire. Jimmy Garoppolo takes the 49ers down the field. Looks like they're going to win the game. Aaron Rodgers then takes his team down the field with no timeouts in like 30 seconds, and they get a walk-off field goal from Mason Crosby to break the 49ers' heart. So we'll get that one again. We saw Bills-Chiefs already. The Bills kicked the Chiefs' ass in Arrowhead. It looked like, oh, my God, maybe the Chiefs are done. You know, maybe the league has figured them out, and they're going to struggle this year. It felt real New England Patriots-ish, you know, real New England Patriots-like, where we would always deem them dead. I remember one year in Arrowhead, as a matter of fact. That's when I thought the whole evil empire was coming to a crashing halt. They got their ass stomped on a Monday night at Arrowhead. There's an iconic picture of Brady on the sidelines with his head down, a whole bunch of Gatorade cups crushed on the ground, and he's just sitting there by himself. And they go on to win the Super Bowl that year, of course, right? But it was a big-time beatdown. We're getting that game again, Bills at Chiefs. So that's another rematch. Rams, Buccaneers, rematch of a game early in the season, week 3, if I'm not mistaken. It was a big matchup then because you're looking at two of the best teams in the NFC squaring off. Rams got the best of the Buccaneers. Then we'll see what happens. Different environment. That game was in LA. This game will be in Tampa. Different teams, different stages where these teams are at. Bucs could be in trouble because their right tackle, Tristan Wirfs, went down. No telling how significant that ankle injury is. Keep in mind, their backup, Wells, also was dealing with an injury. And Brady got his ass kicked in that game because they couldn't block and protect on that right side. So if they can't protect on that right side, they got Von Miller, they got Aaron Donald, they got a bunch of guys, they got Gumby, they got a bunch of guys that they can take advantage of on that right side that can win and really apply pressure to Tom Brady. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic as the week progresses as to whether they can get those guys up to speed and ready to go and healthy to protect Tom Brady's front side. But that's a rematch from the regular season. And then let's see, the only other matchup we have in Wildcard Weekend is Titans-Bengals. They didn't play this year. They played last year, and the Bengals actually beat the Titans last season. But those two teams did not play in the regular season this year. But that's just like this week, only one matchup that isn't a rematch of a regular season game. So the familiarity is there. And so I think you're on to something. This could be a game that is really intriguing and one that if the Bucs aren't careful, they could lose. This is a dangerous opponent for the Buccaneers. What's crazy is that they didn't think they would end up having to play this Rams team. You get the 2 seed and you're thinking, if everybody takes care of business, we're going to get Dallas in divisional round, and the Rams would have to go to Green Bay. I don't know. Remember, Dallas almost beat Tampa Bay in week 1, and so I don't know if they were like, we would much rather see Dallas, especially with that pass rush. They could have gotten after Brady and really made things, hectic for him. But this Rams team isn't any better, right? They can get after you too up front. So we'll see what happens. Should be a really interesting matchup. I don't know who I'm picking yet. Still want to see how the injury situation for the Buccaneers shapes up. Is Leonard Fournette going to be ready to go? Tristan Wirfs, what's his status? Wells, the backup right tackle, how's he faring? There are a lot of things that we got to figure out before I can make my prediction. But that's going to be a really good game. And you're right. They are going to be a big problem for Tampa Bay on Sunday afternoon. Niners fan writes, the Cardinals proved why we never believed in them during the beginning of the season, despite having the best record. They are soft. I don't agree with that last statement. I don't think they're a soft football team. I remember calling them mentally soft. And I think there is a little bit of that to a degree, but I don't think this is a soft team. I don't think they're soft mentally. I don't think they're soft physically. I think they just aren't a complete team right now. And not having their best receiver, I thought, changed their offense drastically. It's amazing. All the weapons that they have, A.J. Green and Christian Kirk and Moore, the rookie receiver, Rondale Moore, and all of these guys that can throw at you. They love this Wesley kid that has these, incredible size and leaping ability. Excuse me. They've got all these weapons, yet their offense is incomplete without DeAndre Hopkins. And you saw it. And Kyler Murray, when things break down or, all these other guys don't win, there isn't that one guy that he's comfortable. I can get it to this guy and he's going to make a play for me. That's what DeAndre Hopkins served as for him. And without him, he's lost. And you saw that tonight. Protect Sports says, them Cards got spanked. That they did. It was a good season. It was a step in the right direction if you're an Arizona Cardinals fan. The first step for Kyler Murray trying to win a Super Bowl is you need to make the playoffs. You need to make it to the playoffs. He needs to play in a playoff game. Find out what that experience is like. This is not Oklahoma. You're not playing in the Orange Bowl, okay? this is the NFL playoffs. It's big boy football. And he got a taste of it. And he did not respond well to that that stage. And you know, the playoffs, as I mentioned already, is much different than the regular season because it's bright lights, it's a big stage, and you have to perform your best on that stage. And he did not do that tonight. I thought he panicked under duress, which I always said that Kyler Murray doesn't like contact. He'd much rather throw the ball up for grabs or slide. And look, he's a small guy, slight frame. He doesn't need to be taking hits. Him sliding is the best thing he can do to keep himself healthy. But that interception he threw, you can't do that. You can't. That's the equivalent of throwing a left-handed interception. Like, you can't do that shit. And that's something he'll have to go back and assess and say, you know what? I got to be better. So we'll see what happens. But I always hearken back to what Carson Palmer said about Kyler Murray. And I agree with him. And I think this is the next evolution of Kyler Murray. He said, Kyler Murray isn't a great leader right now. I agree with that statement. And I remember saying this to myself, watching him and his body language. His body language bothers me because when something doesn't go right, he lets his emotions be seen outwardly, and he's usually blaming someone else for something. A ball is incomplete and a receiver ran a wrong route or something, and you can see him visibly blaming that guy on the field. He gets to the sidelines. He always looks like he's sulking. He doesn't seem like a guy that instills confidence in others. It seems like he's more worried about himself. And if I play well, everybody else will benefit because of it. But as a quarterback, as a leader, you have to uplift the spirits of everyone around you. So you go over to the offensive lineman and you say, hey, fellas, we got this. All right, let's keep our heads in the game. We got this. The next possession, we're going to get this thing going. We're going to go with some tempo. You guys are locked in. Let's do this. Go to your receivers and say, hey, I missed you on that last ball. We're going to connect. They're giving us this coverage. Like, he doesn't strike me as that guy. Okay, he goes over to the sidelines. He's sulking. He looks like his dog just died. Like, that's Kyler Murray. And Carson Palmer picked up on that as well. And he's like, he's not a great leader right now. And I didn't see that leadership in this game. And I haven't seen it in his career to this point, his brief career to this point. And I think that's the next evolution for him. Maybe he's not that guy. He'll never be that guy. But we'll see. He needs to be better with his body language. He needs to be better in his leadership. And he's got to be smarter with the football. Can't have those types of mistakes. That interception, I thought, was the end of this game. You're down 14-0. You punt that football. Who knows what happens? We saw a muffed punt in the Eagles game. You never know what happens. You kick that football back there. He muffs it. You get great field position. It changes the whole game. You don't know. You got to give your punter a chance to kick that football away. You can't be the reason that they're lining up to kick an extra point. And it's 21-0 now. So they got spanked for sure. I agree with you. Metaphor writes, Stafford probably regrets not signing with Washington football team. 1 or 2 wins here, but could have gone all the way with Ron's plan. He didn't regret a thing. And I know you're trolling right there, but he's in the perfect spot for his talents and a team that truly can win the Super Bowl. He wasn't going to do that here, at least not this year. So he's in the perfect spot. And he's 2 games away from going to the Super Bowl. So 2 wins away. So we'll see what happens. Jordan Light the GOAT. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Jordan Light the GOAT writes, is Cliff overrated? There will be some out there that say that. That because there were people that didn't think Cliff Kingsbury should have gotten the job in the first place. You recall when he got the job, he had gotten fired from Texas Tech. He was about to take an offensive coordinator job, I think, at USC before he got the call and ultimately got the job to be the head man in Arizona. I love the hire. If you recall, I thought it was a great hire because of his skill set from a coaching standpoint, and that they were going to have the number 1 pick in the draft. And Kyler Murray, he wanted Kyler Murray when he was coming out of high school. He wanted him. So he's always had a thing for Kyler Murray and an affinity for his game. And I thought it was a perfect match. And we're seeing that. But Cliff Kingsbury is going to have to do some soul searching And he's going to have to figure out how to go about winning games as the season wears on. Because as I've said already, this Cardinals team, and they did it last year. They did the same thing last year. They got off to a fast start and they flamed out. Now, again, injuries happen, different things transpire. But at the end of the day, this Cardinals team, they don't finish up seasons well. And I remember that game last year, clear as day, on a Saturday. You had to watch it on Amazon Prime. They have an opportunity to beat the San Francisco 49ers. They win that game. 49ers had nothing to play for. They were awful last year with all the injuries that they had. They let CJ Beathard get them 13-10 and really dash their hopes to making the playoffs. So he struggled down the stretch in seasons. And the only thing that saved him this year was that they started so well. They were 7-0. So he had a big cushion, and he was able to hold on for dear life because they struggled down the stretch. There's no reason for you to not win the division when you're up 3 games with 5 to go. But they lost 4 out of their final 5 games, squandered a 3-game lead, and lost the division, had to go on the road. And it didn't matter because they were an awful home team this year. So they were better off playing on the road anyway, but they got stomped. So Cliff Kingsbury is going to have to do some soul searching and figure out what adjustments need to be made and how they can not only get off to a fast start, but finish the season on a high note as well. I don't think he's overrated. I just think he's continuing to learn. And at some point, though, you got to start winning at the end of seasons. You know, you can't keep learning. It's like the person that likes to keep going to school and earning all of these degrees. At some point, you got to turn these degrees into something. You got to make it count, or else you're just staring at a bunch of debt. He's still learning, I feel like, but at some point, you got to take all the stuff you learned and actually produce results. I don't think he's overrated, though. Metaphor writes, surprised Aaron Donald didn't get ejected for those face blows. Superstardom has its privileges. This man's been ejected more times than I can remember a player being ejected from games in the last 5 to 7 years. I've already said he's the one guy in the league, and I told you there are guys that are crazy, and then there are guys that are crazy. And Aaron Donald is crazy. Like, I'm not saying he takes steroids, but he conducts himself as if he's on steroids. Well, you know, roid rage. This dude loses his effing mind when somebody does something to him on the field that he takes umbrage with. He loses it. It's like he blacks out. Like if you put, you know, hands to his face and then, you know, and then you get a little physical with him after the play, he just effing loses it. You know, maybe you've done it twice in the game and officials don't see it, and now he's frustrated. Next thing you know, his hand is in your face, or he's got your face mask and he won't let it go. And Aaron Donald's effing Looney Tunes. He's one of those dudes, hey, you really don't want that smoke because he's really crazy, like crazy. So, and he don't give a shit. He's been ejected at least 3 or 4 times in his career. He don't care. Playoff game, regular season game, he doesn't give a shit. Equal opportunity offender is Aaron Donald. So for me, he's just a guy that the referees know about, and they try. It's not that different than a NBA superstar. They get that first technical foul in the first quarter, and you know they barking at the official in the third, and if it's a regular dude, his ass is tossed. But because it's LeBron James, they swallow that whistle like, hey, LeBron, look, man, chill out. You know, you get that extra warning, and they talk to you and say, hey, look, you on the verge. Don't make me do it. Whereas if it's just a regular average Joe, if it's a jag, all right, get your ass out of here. You're done. So Aaron Donald gets the benefit of that. Definitely. Superstardom does help in that situation. They know who they're talking to, and they know who they're about to eject. John Perez, thank you for the comment. My guy John Perez writes, Cards are a first-timer in the postseason, so I'm not going to egg on them a ton. They'll learn from it and come back next year. I mean, you don't just get a pass because you don't have experience. The Bengals didn't have any experience. That was Joe Burrow's first time in the playoffs. That was his coach, Zach Taylor's first time coaching in the postseason. That was T. Higgins' first game in the postseason. That was Jamar Chase's first game in the postseason. Joe Mixon's first. Like, you don't just get a pass because you've never played in a playoff game and you don't have a ton of experience on the roster. You still have to go out and execute and play ball, play like you know how to play. But it does matter. But it's not the end-all, be-all. It's not you don't automatically lose because you lack experience. So I don't want to go too far in giving them an excuse. They didn't play well. They didn't look prepared to come out and play against a Rams team that had seen them twice already this year. The Rams looked prepared for everything the Cardinals were going to throw at them. And conversely, the Cardinals looked like they were lost, like they had never played this Rams team before and didn't know what they were getting themselves into. That starts with the coaching, and then it trickles onto the field. And these players have to be, accountable for their mistakes. And there were penalties and missed assignments, blown coverages. But at the same time, I don't know if the coaches necessarily put them in some of the best positions to succeed. When the Cardinals were at their best during the season, they ran the football. I thought they put too much on Kyler Murray's plate early in this game. They didn't run it enough, I didn't think. But that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is this is their first postseason experience. They'll learn from it, and we'll see if they're better because of it. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, so you saying Donald is like that Marvel trailer dude? I didn't watch it, so I can't even tell you what it was. I'm not a big commercial guy. I shouldn't say that. I'm not a big halftime guy. I usually mute the TV and go do things during halftime. I rarely watch halftime shows, so I didn't see it. I know it was like Moon something that they were supposed to be showing a trailer for, and I did want to see it, but I forgot that they were showing it, and I left, so I didn't see it. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Metaphor writes, Commander Carr rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? We'll see. I mean, a lot of changes in Vegas. They just got rid of Mike Mayock. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow on the podcast, but they're going to find themselves a new head coach, it looks like, as well, new GM. So it's going to be intriguing to see. That's a big domino. It's a massive domino that's going to fall. And sort of like last offseason where we were waiting to see what happened with Matthew Stafford once we found out he was going to be traded. That was a massive domino. We're going to see what happens. The first domino was Carson Wentz getting traded to the Indianapolis Colts. And then, Matthew Stafford getting traded was the next domino. And the crazy part was we thought with these dominoes falling that it would be a chain reaction. Oh, the Rams trade for Matthew Stafford. Now, the Lions need a quarterback. Well, they got Jared Goff in return. The Eagles traded Carson Wentz away. Now they need a quarterback. Well, they just promoted Jalen Hurts. So we'll see what happens. If the Raiders trade away Derek Carr, they are going to need a quarterback. There isn't a guy on their roster right now. So, the Vikings and Kirk Cousins, that's another situation we're keeping an eye on. And so there are some interesting, pieces this offseason. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. Condoleezza Perry, my girl Condo P, writes, I don't trust Stafford. Like everything else about the Rams versus the Bucks. I get that. And you are totally you have every right to feel that way. Every right to feel that way and not trust Matthew Stafford. I get it. The phrase I was looking for, you are totally justified in feeling that way. Totally justified because of his track record. Have the jury's still out on Matthew Stafford. And I don't know if you heard the conversation surrounding this game on socials, but everybody kept saying that the guy with the most pressure, I think they even talked about this during the telecast, the guy with the most pressure on him during this postseason, especially wild card weekend in particular, was Matthew Stafford. Hadn't won a playoff game. They showed all these various stats of, active quarterbacks, and then they showed all time in NFL history with, the most career wins, but no playoff wins, and all these different things, all these different stats, most touchdown passes and not, winning a playoff game, all this different stuff that they had on Stafford. He got that monkey off his back, but he didn't have to go out and win them the game today. He didn't have to go out and throw it 37 times. He threw it 17 times in this game. He managed the game, and you have to do that as a quarterback. But there will come a time in this postseason, whether it's this upcoming weekend against Brady and company, or the following week against Aaron Rodgers, if that is in fact the matchup, or whatever the case may be, or if they make it all the way to the Super Bowl, there will come a time where Matthew Stafford is going to have to win them the game, whether it's a tie ball game and they need him to take them down the field and put them in position for a field goal or score a touchdown, or they're trailing by 4, or they're trailing by 5 and they need a touchdown. He will be put in a situation where he's going to need to win them the game, and we're going to see if he can do it or not. Last week against the 49ers, he was in a position where they needed him. He took him down the field. They scored a touchdown to take the lead. The defense gave it up. They said, all right, we need you again, Stafford, after the 49ers went down the field and got a game lead-taking field goal, and ultimately turned into the game-winning field goal. On the opening possession of overtime, he throws a pick. So we're going to see at some point Stafford, because I've already said this, you can't win the Super Bowl with your quarterback just being a passenger for the entire duration of the trip. At some point, your quarterback, if he's not driving the entire time, at some point, he's going to have to get up from the passenger seat, get in the driver's seat, and he's going to have to drive you to a victory. The 49ers tried to do that with Jimmy Garoppolo in 19, and then in the Super Bowl, they needed him to get out of the passenger seat, get into the driver's seat, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't drive them to the victory. At some point, Stafford's going to have to win them a game. So we're going to see. I think Stafford can do it. I, like you, am apprehensive. But unlike you, I'm not willing to go as far as to say I don't think he can do it. But he's the one thing that's stopping me from feeling like the Rams are going to win the Super Bowl. But he's also the reason I think they can win the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens. Big Blue Rising writes, hey, Lou, is Kingsbury in trouble? These second half collapses by the Cardinals happens too often. So I already talked about that briefly. No, he's not in trouble. They've gotten better each and every single year of his tenure in Arizona to this point. They've had 2 back-to-back winning seasons in Arizona. So they go from, don't know what they were in his first year in Arizona, Kyler Murray's rookie season. But it might have been like 7-9, 8-8, something like that, 6-10. Last year, they were 9-7, but they missed the postseason. And then this year, they're 11-6, but they started 7-0. So, they faltered down the stretch. Losers of 4 out of what is that? Losers of 6 of their last 10 games of the season. So, obviously, that's a problem. And they did the same thing last year. They started out hot. I don't recall what their record was last year, but it was something like maybe like 7-3. Remember, they had that crazy Hail Murray against the Bills I think that was the last highlight of the season in 2020. You know, that crazy Hail Mary that he threw to DeAndre Hopkins. And I think after that game, they might have been like, 8-4 or 7-4, 7-3. And then they collapsed down the stretch last year. He's not in trouble, but management is going to want to see him take that next step, get this team over the hump. They've given him all the talent he could ask for on offense. They're going to lose, I think, James Conner in free agency. And that's going to be a big blow. The man, if he didn't lead the NFL in touchdowns, he was second behind Jonathan Taylor. Those two were going back and forth at one point. But the guy was a machine down in the red zone, and he proved to be a much more versatile piece at the running back position than I ever gave him credit for. They're going to have to replace him. So they're going to need another running back. Maybe they get one via the draft. Maybe they look to free agency. We'll see what they decide to do. But they're going to have to take the next step. But I don't think he's in trouble. Not at all. Garrett Buckmaster writes, much rather face Tampa without Godwin, AB, and maybe Fournette than play Green Bay and cold Lambeau. Will still be a challenge, especially if we do those soft zones like we like to do. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that this is a much better matchup for you than Green Bay in Green Bay, as you mentioned. Not to say that your team is soft, but that's where your season ended last year. And it could easily end there again. Obviously, the Packers could win, you could win, and you got to go to Green Bay again. But you want to prolong that as long as possible. You want to push that out as far into the future as possible. And by the 49ers taking care of business, that allows you to go to Tampa. What was funny to me, there was this stark contrast. The last game we had watched on Saturday night, it was 5 degrees. With the wind chill, it was like -6. It was 66 degrees in Tampa on Sunday afternoon. You know what I'm saying? Like, who doesn't want to play in that? Either you want to play in a dome, like the Rams just did, a retractable roof situation, or you want to play in Tampa if you got to play outside. You want to play in Florida, somewhere warm. There aren't many places you can play that are going to be 66 in January. So I get that. But the opponent is serious. But to your point, this is a totally different Tampa Bay team than the one that you saw in week 3. And it's not necessarily for the better. No AB, no Godwin. There may not be any Fournette. There may not be any Tristan Wirfs. They may be vulnerable. Now, I thought they had some guys step up. I thought Giovanni Bernard stepped up. I thought Keyshawn Vaughn in his second year out of Vandy stepped up. And Mike Evans is going to have to be an alpha. You know what you're going to do. You're going to take Jalen Ramsey and you're going to sick him on Mike Evans and dare one of these other receivers to beat you. Scotty Miller's going to have to step up. What's my man Bashad Perriman gonna have to step up? The young receiver from Minnesota. I think this is his second year in the league, and him and Brady didn't necessarily look like they were on the same page. He's gonna have to step up because I think you're gonna take Jalen Ramsey and say, all right, take Mike Evans out of this game. So it'll be interesting. I think this is a really good matchup for you. I really do. Rich writes, fell asleep on the NFC East couch last night. But Lou, he says, meant to tell the Cowboys, and I said, get on the bench and get out the game. I'm not even going to try to make sense of that comment. I'm lost, and I'm just going to keep it pushing. It has something to do with the Cowboys losing, and I'm all for it. Whatever the hell you meant. Metaphor writes, Salvation Army reported record donations to callers from Dallas, Fort Worth, and the greater Philadelphia area. Proud to provide some support with my all-black charity. That's an inside joke for those of you who do not get that one. at all. Let's see. Mari too slimy. Right. If the Cowboys play this same Cardinals team today, who wins? I felt like if the Cowboys played the Cardinals again, they would have beaten them. I think that now there's this thing where the Cardinals just seem to have the Cowboys number with Kyler Murray. Well, he's now 2-0 against the Cowboys, but I really felt like if they played them again, they would have beaten them. I really, truly do. I don't know if this Cardinals team beats anybody in the postseason. That includes the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not sure if they would have even beaten the Eagles had they played them. They're mentally, I think they're struggling with confidence right now. So I think Dallas would have beaten them, but that's nor here nor there. Red Wings 0-1 writes, gotta say I'm happy for Stafford to finally get his first playoff win. Let's see if he can keep it up. Glad to see Cam Akers back in action and looking good as well. I'm shocked at how good he looked in this game. I did not expect him, and I saw him briefly last week against San Francisco, but man, again, we're not talking about an ACL, talking about an Achilles, and I can't begin to tell you how many times a guy's torn his Achilles and not looked the same for about 2 years. And this guy's coming back 6 months later, essentially, and playing as if he sprained his ankle. I mean, did you see some of the cuts he was making in this game? I mean, there was one play he caught a pass out in the flats on a swing route, and he just stuck his foot in the ground and broke that defender off something proper. And I think it was, Gardnick, and he just went flying by, didn't even touch him. In two-hand tag and flag football, Cam Akers would have still been running. I mean, it was ridiculous. So he looks really good. And the thing that he brings to the table, that's different than a Sony Michel is he is equally as dangerous out of the backfield as a receiver. I mean, how many times did they try to throw it to him? Remember that one play where he didn't really see the ball until late. I don't think he picked it up until late, where Stafford tried to hit him down the sidelines. And it was a little bit low, but he could have caught that ball and adjusted to it if he would have seen it a lot sooner. And then you get the Odell Beckham, double pass where he throws it to Akers. Akers is a threat out of the backfield as a receiver, not just as a guy that's a check down over the ball or a swing route guy or a screen guy. I'm talking about he's actually running routes down the field and can catch the football. So he brings another dimension and element to their offense with his ability to get out of the backfield and make himself available as a receiver. So Cam Akers, to me, he adds another dimension to this Rams offense. And I will say this. Matthew Stafford has gotten a rap. I won't call it a bad rap because he's earned some of this in Detroit. But we know that the Detroit organization hasn't been well run for quite some time. And so he's got an opportunity to change the narrative. This is his best opportunity to change the narrative. That's why Jerry Jones said, I can't remember the last time I was this disappointed at the end of a season, because he knew this was the year. This shit is wide open. How many times have you heard me say, this is the most wide open I've ever seen the playoffs? Because usually there is a dominant team somewhere in the mix that you say, I don't give a shit who you beat. You still got to go through this team. And I don't see you beating them. For years, for decades, it was the Patriots on the AFC side of the bracket. So no matter what was going on the NFC side, you knew you had to go through Brady and the Patriots. Whether you got through the NFC, slate, and you knew who was waiting for you on the other side of the bracket. And you knew that was going to be tough sledding. Then it became the Chiefs. Even if you got through on the NFC side, you knew the Chiefs were going to be waiting for you on the other side. That's tough. There's no dominant team on the AFC side, even though there's some really good teams. And I think Buffalo's a damn good team. Kansas City's going to be dangerous. Like those are the two teams that I think, and I hate to disrespect Tennessee, but I'm going to disrespect Tennessee. They're going to have to earn it from me. Because they got Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. I'm sorry, not sorry. Of all the teams left in the AFC side of the bracket, who's the one quarterback you look at and say, I don't know, man. I don't know if he can get it done in a pressure situation, even though he's done it in some situations. This ain't the Houston Texans, though, that you going out and putting together a drive to salt the game away. This ain't the Houston Texans. It's Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. It's, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. It's, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And they've played all of these teams for the most part. That's why you got to respect the Titans. They've played all these teams already and won most of those games at that. Beat Buffalo, beat Kansas City. So they're like, put some respect on our name. I get it. But this is the playoffs. That's the regular season. This is the playoffs. So I said all of that to say this. Shit's wide open. And Stafford is going to have an opportunity to change the narrative and rewrite this chapter in the history of Matthew Stafford and change the way people view his career. Because if he wins a Super Bowl, then you start having the Hall of Fame conversation because his numbers are Hall of Fame worthy. To me, he's in that Phillip Rivers category where you go, man, is he a Hall of Famer? The numbers say he's a Hall of Famer, but you never quite felt like, oh, it's Matthew Stafford. Oh, it's, Phillip Rivers. Yeah, he's really good, but I never was like threatened by Phillip Rivers. I was never threatened by Matthew Stafford. That could change with one season. This season right here, this postseason. This one postseason could change everything for him. This is a good step in the right direction. We'll see what happens next. Metaphor. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Metaphor writes, Dallas on the couch floor if Moore and Quinn get head coaching jobs. So you already know I'm not the biggest Kellen Moore fan. However, I will admit the guy has some talent. And I think he could do some good work if he lands in the right situation. Like, I think the perfect situation for Kellen Moore would be Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. Like, that's the kind of head coach you're looking to pair with Trevor Lawrence, a guy that's innovative, that's going to cater to the quarterback position because he himself was a quarterback in the league, and he's going to really try to accentuate Trevor Lawrence's strengths and minimize his weaknesses. And it's a guy you can grow with, which is why, generally speaking, organizations try to pair young quarterbacks that they've invested in with up-and-coming young offensive minds, because what you don't want to do is go get you a defensive-minded coach who then has to go out and get a wonderful offensive coordinator, and then that offensive coordinator puts that quarterback in a great position, but then he ultimately is going to get a job, just like Brian Daboll in Buffalo. Like, I want to see what the hell Josh Allen does once Brian Daboll leaves, because eventually Brian Daboll is going to get a job, right? And when he does, that next guy's going to come in. He's going to have a whole different offensive philosophy, unless there's someone on that Bills staff that was an understudy under Brian Daboll that they want to, to promote to offensive coordinator that can kind of keep that same offense in place. If they don't and they move on, bring a new guy in, then you got to see how Josh Allen adjusts, because Brian Daboll, to me, makes beautiful music with Josh Allen. And that's the thing you want to guard against when you got a young quarterback, is you don't want to be flipping offensive coordinators left and right. You want to pair that young quarterback with a young offensive-minded head coach, or just an offensive-minded head coach in general, so that if that guy gets it and that quarterback and that head coach hit it off, they can make beautiful music for many years to come. So I think Kellen Moore would do wonders for a guy like Trevor Lawrence, or maybe a situation like in Chicago, even though I don't really like that situation for him. But, a lot of people think that, Justin Fields could be a Dak Prescott type of quarterback. We'll see. I think Trevor Lawrence would benefit from a guy like Kellen Moore, even though I'm not the biggest Kellen Moore fan. Now, Dan Quinn, on the other hand, I've always been a fan of Dan Quinn. Thought that, he got a bad rap in Atlanta because of that Super Bowl collapse. And look, there are a lot of factors as to why they didn't win that Super Bowl. And, I don't know if he ever truly did recover from that. The defenses, I can tell you, got worse and worse and worse every year thereafter. He's supposed to be a defensive guy. And so I think the biggest problem was they just couldn't get to the quarterback. And he really suffered because of that. You can see when he's got horses up front, he can manufacture some pressure. They just didn't have it in Atlanta, but they played hard for him. They loved him in Atlanta. I remember that year, I want to say it was 2019 that we thought he was going to get fired, and then they ran off like, 4 straight at the end, including going to San Francisco and beating the 49ers, beating New Orleans in New Orleans. Both of those teams were among the best in football that year in 2019, and they beat both of them in their building. So they played hard for Dan Quinn, and they saved his job. And then ultimately he didn't get it done in 2020, and they canned him. So Dan Quinn deserves another opportunity. He'll get another opportunity. And with what he did with this Dallas Cowboys defense, he's going to get another shot. Now the question is where, and we'll see what happens. That's, to me, the biggest loss if Quinn gets a job. Because, again, I've said this already, and I'll say it again. What's the biggest difference between Dallas? And I said this when they got him, and people looked at me like I had 3 eyes. Okay? I said the biggest offseason acquisition for the Cowboys, and I said you could argue in the entire NFC East, was Dan Quinn. Not a player, but a coach. I said Dallas is essentially putting the same defensive talent on the field. They added a few pieces. Dan Quinn brought a couple of guys that was familiar with his scheme to Dallas with him, Keanu Neal and DeMonte KZ. He brought a couple of guys with him that knew the scheme. But for the most part, Neville Gallimore and Tank Lawrence and Randy Gregory and Leighton Vander Esch and Anthony Brown and Trayvon Diggs, all of these guys were there last year. All of these players were there last year. The biggest difference they overhauled the safety position. Jaron Kearse and Malik Hooker. They overhauled one of the weakest positions on their defense, was the safety. So that helps. But when you look at the biggest change, it came from the coaching. They lose Dan Quinn, they could easily go back to being a subpar defense. Not the defense that we saw in 2020 when they were one of the worst units in NFL history. But they could go back to being a less than stellar unit because Dan Quinn is no longer there. So that's going to be a big one if they lose Dan Quinn, and I think he will get a job, but we'll see what happens. John Livingston, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, JL Smooth writes, what up, man? He says, what up, Lou, man? What up? He says, man, did the Cardinals miss D-Hop in this game? They looked awful. They got us as the last game of the divisional round, Allen versus Mahomes round 4, with Mahomes being up 2-1. Let's go, Buffalo. They saved the best for last. I've already said that to me is going to be the best game of the divisional round. It could arguably be the best game of the playoffs. We'll see how it goes. But that's the one I'm looking forward to the most. And we'll talk more about that, obviously, during the course of the week. However, yes, the Cardinals missed DeAndre Hopkins desperately, not just in this game, but down the stretch of the regular season. Once he was placed on IR, essentially, I shouldn't say IR. Once he was essentially, I think he was placed on IR, the short-term IR. But once it was announced he needed surgery and that he would be out for the remainder of the regular season, I knew they were going to struggle. And we saw that. And we saw it in this game as well. So we've hit our hour mark. Take a couple more comments and then we'll get out of here. No need to belabor the point here. Let's see. Let's see if we even got any more comments that definitely. Red Wings 01 writes, prayers up for Buda Baker. That was scary. Anytime you see a guy go limp going into the turf and then literally his head dropped and went headfirst into the turf. And, anytime you see the arms lock up, you already know that dude is out upon contact. And he was out cold. Obviously, Cam Akers didn't know that when he sunned him and said, "You too little," and he sunned him. And that's a tough situation. You can see how hurt Cam Akers was when he realized, oh my God, this guy's not getting up, and they're bringing the stretcher out here. he felt bad. Nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that I've talked about briefly. I'm not going to, belabor the point. I've talked about this before, but football players are different, man. There's no other sport that is played where you have to be able to see a teammate, a guy that you love, on the ground, laying there motionless, get stretchered off, leave in an ambulance, and then you have to remove that from the memory bank and go and play football. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Yet football players do it, and it's second nature. And we are so numb to that as fans that we don't even take the time to acknowledge what these guys mentally have to go through to see one of their teammates, one of their brothers on the ground like that, and then have to get over that because now you got to play football. Like, mentally, that shit is tough to do. And as fans, we don't even bat an eye. We say the obligatory prayers up for this player. Now you want the rest of the team to go on and win it for this guy or play well. That's not normal. Football players are not normal, okay? They're a different breed. I keep trying to tell y'all this. Anyway, prayers definitely up for Budda Baker, man. That was a scary situation. Glad to know that he's got movement in all of his extremities, upper and lower. So that's great news. Hopefully he doesn't have to stay in the hospital overnight and get back to Arizona. And it'd be nice if he could fly back to Arizona with the team, but we'll see what happens. Aku Max writes, Cam Akers knew what he was doing even after he seen the med team on the field said F him. He didn't say F him. He was talking to somebody else because what happened was he sunned him. He didn't know he was knocked out at the time. Now, had he really looked at him, he would have known. The man's arm was up in the air like this. But he wasn't paying attention to that. He just saw him on the ground. He glanced at him. He said he sunned him, and he kept walking. And then, the rest of the Cardinals players are already motioning for the medical team to come out. And then he's taking a knee because he realizes he's not getting up. And a couple of Cardinals players had taken offense to what he had done. So he was saying F them. You know what I mean? So it got dicey, but you can see he felt bad about it. Nobody wants to hurt anybody. So anyway. Red Wings 01 says, I got to say this looked like one of the best officiating games I've seen all season. I don't know about y'all, but I thought they did a good job. We say that when there aren't a lot of flags thrown, in a weekend where one of the officiating crews already has been told you can't officiate any more playoff games. That first game, the crew with the ladies' man, Jerome Boga, personal foul, roughing the passer, number 58 defense, 15-yard penalty, automatic first down. He can't do any more playoff games this year. I don't know why the hell they thought Jerome Boger and this makeshift ragtag group was going to be able to do a good job. Anyway, they're done. Okay. But we saw some really, really rough crews. And, these are all-star crews that they put together. These aren't crews from the regular season that work together all the time. These are all-star crews that are coming together. And you could argue not the Bills game, but the first game, the Bengals Raiders, that's the Jerome Boger game. They're done for the rest of the postseason. They were horrible. And then I thought the Eagles referees were rough. I thought they had a bunch of calls that roughing the passer on Brady on the opening possession. Are you kidding me? That was trash. I thought they had a rough go of it. Obviously, the referees in the Dallas game are going to be criticized. I didn't think they did anything wrong. I thought a lot of those penalties were warranted and justified. There might have been one or two calls, and then you're like, come on, really? But for the most part, a lot of those penalties were warranted. And we didn't see the best officiating in these games. So This one seemed cleaner because you didn't feel like they were, imparting themselves on, in the game, onto the game. So it was solid. Anyway, got one more super chat. And we'll take this one and we'll leave on this note. My guy Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Metaphor writes, beyond football, celebrate MLK, strive for equality. Much has changed, but still so much to go. I'm thankful for his vision and sacrifice. Be safe, all. Couldn't have said it any better myself. I think, this holiday, we fought for this holiday. A lot of people growing up don't realize this wasn't always a holiday. We had to fight for this one, right? And then when we first got this holiday, it was a shared holiday. They threw some other dudes in here to make it, an okay holiday. Like, nah, get them other dudes the hell out of here. I think it was like Jackson, King, and somebody like, get these other dudes the hell out of here. This is just Martin Luther King Day. And we got the holiday. And now I think over the year, it is morphed into more than just a day off of work, because that's what it was for a long time. People just took it as a day off of work. It's a day to reflect. And I think now with the culture being what it is and the time that we're living in, I think it's even more important, maybe more imperative now to really celebrate a guy like Dr. Martin Luther King and what he stood for. And we're still fighting for those same things today. And I think he'd be proud of some of the progress that's been made, but he'd also say, I thought we'd be a lot further along than where we are. So, everybody always likes to talk about the I have a dream speech, but there's so much more. The guy was so much depth there. And he wasn't perfect. He was an imperfect hero, but most heroes are imperfect. And so he's human. But the message was never lost. And I think you need to do yourself a service, do your kids a service, and make sure you teach them on this day, if no other day. Make sure you teach them about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., what he stood for and what he was preaching and striving for. And so I think that's what this day has morphed into. And I love it. I love all of the attention that this day has generated and continues to generate, and hopefully in the future continues to grow and generate even more attention, because the message is what we care about the most. So anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Thank you guys for joining me on the program. That completes Super Wildcard Weekend. 6 games, 2 games that went down to the wire that were entertaining. The other 4 were really thorough ass kickings. Buffalo, disposing of the Patriots, the Buccaneers taking care of the Philadelphia Eagles, the Chiefs taking care of the Steelers in this game here, Rams disposing and dispatching of their fellow family member, the Arizona Cardinals. The 2 good games, the Bengals, Raiders, and of course 49ers and Cowboys. So this was a very uneventful wild card weekend. When you look at the totality, I would have at least liked 3-3. Give me one more good game to counterbalance the blowouts. But look, the best teams went out and took care of business. And this is, I'm going to say this one more time and then we're going to get out of here. I don't want to keep doing this because I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this is why we didn't need the 7th seed. I mean, all you're doing is allowing a team that's going to get in and get their brains bashed in. Instead of just giving that 2 seed a bye, you're essentially making them play, but it's like a bye week because they're going to destroy that team in that 7th spot. And so we saw the Chiefs destroy the Steelers. That they didn't need to be in the playoffs. And we saw the Buccaneers destroy the Eagles, and the Eagles didn't need to be in the playoffs. We could do without the 7th seed, but it is what it is. They're not going to turn around and retract that 7th seed. So I don't need to keep talking about it. But all we did in Wild Card Weekend, Super Wild Card Weekend, is all we did was we took out the trash. That's what we did. Now it's serious. Now the good teams are left. We took out the trash and the teams that infiltrated the playoffs, that watered down the product. Now we got good football left. So we'll see what happens. But the Rams take care of business. 34-11, dominate the Arizona Cardinals. This game was 28-0 at one point. This was a total ass thrashing at the hands of the Los Angeles Rams. And so Cardinals season ends in disappointment, but they've taken a step in the right direction, make it to the postseason. Now let's see what they do next year and if they can come back stronger and better because of this. Meanwhile, Matthew Stafford gets his first career postseason win. This Rams team looks like they're clicking on all cylinders once again. Cam Akers looked phenomenal tonight. Odell Beckham Jr., shame on you if you step to the old dirty Beckham. Starting to look like he's integrating himself very well. I thought he was done. Everyone told me he was done in Cleveland. We can't get this guy to find a place in this offense. I don't see any problems with him. He looks perfectly fine to me. He's starting to integrate himself well, and they're starting to really play good football on that side of the ball. The defense we know is capable. I still think they've got some leaky areas there, but we'll see what happens with Brady, because I think Brady may be able to take advantage now. He didn't have all his stuff. And if that right tackle situation is still up in the air, that could really bode well for the Rams and be a huge problem for the Buccaneers. But we've got plenty of time during the course of the week to discuss that. Rams get it done, advance to the divisional round where they'll take on the 2-seeded Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me. Look forward to chopping it up with you tomorrow on the Louie T Network podcast, where we'll recap Super Wildcard Weekend, among other topics, and start to look forward to the divisional round and everything that comes with it. Until then, you guys enjoy the rest of your night. Have a good one. I look forward to chopping it up with you at a later date and time. God bless and good night.